At 95, Clint Eastwood says, "She was the only one who could do that to me." Clint Eastwood was born as Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, California. He grew up during the Great Depression, a time when many families struggled with money. This tough childhood helped shape who he became and taught him to work hard. His early life meant moving a lot around California because his dad worked as a steelworker and had to go wherever he could find work. These early years taught him never to give up, to stay humble, and to be independent. These are the same qualities we saw in his movies and in his real life. Eastwood first became famous in the late 1950s when he got a role as Rowdy Yates in a TV Western show called Rawhide. The show ran from 1959 to 1965 and was super popular, giving Eastwood his first taste of being famous. But it was his jump to international stardom in the mid-1960s that made him a true movie legend. Working with Italian director Sergio Leone, Eastwood starred in 3 groundbreaking Western movies called the Dollars Trilogy: A Fistful of Dollars in 1964, For a Few Dollars More in 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966. These spaghetti westerns introduced everyone to the iconic man with no name, a quiet tough guy whose moral compass wasn't always clear, and audiences loved him. Eastwood's performance changed the Western movie genre, making it grittier and more realistic compared to the cleaner, more traditional cowboy movies from earlier times. In the 1970s and 1980s, Eastwood kept growing as an actor and director, starring in and directing many successful films that critics loved. He created another legendary character, Dirty Harry Callahan, in the movie Dirty Harry in 1971. This tough, no-nonsense San Francisco cop became famous for delivering justice his own way, outside the normal rules. This idea really connected with people who were worried about rising crime and didn't trust authority figures anymore. The film led to several sequels and made Eastwood known as a tough, uncompromising action star. Beyond his acting success, Clint Eastwood became one of Hollywood's most respected and hard-working directors. His directing career started with Play Misty for Me in 1971, and it showed he had a great eye for storytelling and could create movies with deep emotions and interesting characters. Films like Unforgiven in 1992, which won Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director, Mystic River in 2003, $1 Million Baby in 2004, and American Sniper in 2014 showed he was a filmmaker who could explore human nature with depth, sensitivity, and careful attention. Unforgiven was especially important because it challenged the myths of the Old West and made people think seriously about violence, right and wrong, and redemption. Through these movies, Eastwood didn't just reinvent himself, he also helped change American cinema in important ways. He's won multiple Academy Awards, Golden Globes, and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute. Despite all these honors, he stayed down to earth, known for being quiet, having a simple style, and carrying himself with dignity. Outside of movies, Eastwood has lived a varied life. He was a politician, serving as mayor of Carmel by the Sea, California from 1986 to 1988. He's an accomplished jazz musician, a dedicated father of 8 children, and someone who cares deeply about protecting the environment. What makes Clint Eastwood truly amazing is how he keeps reinventing himself. At a time when many actors his age had faded away, Eastwood stayed not only relevant but also creatively strong. Even into his 90s, he continued to act, direct, and push boundaries with recent works like Cry Macho in 2021, showing his creative spirit was still going strong. He's one of the rare entertainers whose work spans generations and different types of movies, leaving his mark on westerns, thrillers, dramas, war films, and biopics. Clint Eastwood, known for his tough guy image on screen and long career in Hollywood, also got a lot of attention for his colorful and complicated personal life, especially his many romantic relationships over the years. Often seen as a modern-day Casanova, Eastwood had a reputation for being incredibly charming but hard to pin down when it came to love. Throughout his life, he was romantically linked to a long list of women from both inside and outside the entertainment world. Some of the women he dated or was involved with include actress Anita Lewis, the glamorous Mamie Van Doren, and stuntwoman and dancer Roxanne Tunis. His relationships also included famous journalist and food critic Gail Green, as well as French screen icon Catherine Deneuve, whose brief romance with Eastwood got a lot of tabloid attention. One of Eastwood's most famous and publicized relationships was with actress Sondra Locke, but he also had connections with women like actress and model Jill Banner, the sultry singer Keely Smith, and rising star Jamie Rose. Other names connected to Eastwood's love life include Hollywood actresses like Inger Stevens, Jo Ann Harris, and Susan St. James, as well as activist Jean Seberg. He was even linked to lesser-known women like Megan Rose, Jane Brolin, Bridget Byrne, and Christina Sandera, the last one becoming a long-term companion in his later years. Despite being so famous, Eastwood often preferred to keep many of these relationships private, adding mystery to his already mysterious personality. On December 19, 1953, at the young age of 23, Clint Eastwood married Maggie Johnson, a model and secretary he had met on a blind date earlier that year. Their marriage marked the beginning of an important chapter in his life. Even though it looked like a normal marriage on the outside, their relationship was complicated by Eastwood's early success in Hollywood and the temptations that came with being famous. They eventually had 2 children together, a son, Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, who became a successful jazz bassist and composer, and a daughter, Allison Eastwood, born in 1972, who later became an actress and director. However, Eastwood's affairs with other women put serious strain on the marriage, and by 1984, the couple had separated after 3 decades together. Their divorce, finalized in 1984, was reportedly one of the most expensive celebrity divorces at the time, with Johnson receiving an estimated $25 to $30 million. While still legally married to Johnson, Eastwood began a significant relationship with dancer and stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis, which lasted from 1959 to 1973. Their romance was mostly kept secret because Eastwood was still married, but it led to the birth of his daughter Kimber in 1964. Kimber was raised by Tunis, and her father's identity wasn't publicly acknowledged until many years later when Eastwood's extended family and personal history started getting more media attention. Despite the secrecy, this relationship played an important role in Eastwood's early private life and was one of the first signs of his pattern of having multiple romantic relationships at the same time. In 1975, Eastwood entered into one of the most public and artistically important relationships of his life with actress Sondra Locke. Their partnership extended both off and on the screen as they appeared together in several of Eastwood's most iconic films, including The Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Sudden Impact. The two lived together for over 14 years, during which Locke became one of Eastwood's most well-known companions. However, even though they had a close professional and romantic relationship, Eastwood was allegedly involved with other women at the same time and reportedly fathered at least 3 children during his time with Locke, a fact that later caused controversy and legal battles between them. Their relationship ended badly in April 1989, leading to a highly publicized legal fight in which Locke accused Eastwood of lying to her and sabotaging her career. One of the secret relationships Eastwood had during his time with Locke was with Jacelyn Reeves, a flight attendant. Their affair, kept secret for many years, resulted in the birth of 2 children, Scott Eastwood, born in 1986, and Catherine Eastwood, born in 1988. For a long time, Reeves raised both children away from the spotlight, and Eastwood's fatherhood wasn't widely known until Scott began pursuing an acting career of his own in the 2000s. Scott has since become a rising Hollywood star, inheriting his father's rugged good looks and following in his footsteps in both style and career. Catherine has also tried acting and writing, though she stayed more low-key than her brother. Following his breakup with Sondra Locke, Eastwood's next significant relationship was with actress Frances Fisher, best known for her roles in movies and TV shows, including Titanic and Unforgiven. Their relationship began in the early 1990s and lasted several years. In 1993, they had a daughter, Francesca Eastwood, who later became a TV personality, actress, and model. Like many of his previous relationships, Eastwood's partnership with Fisher eventually ended, though they've remained friendly and worked together in raising their daughter. Clint Eastwood married for the second time much later in life. On March 31, 1996, he married Dina Ruiz, a former TV news anchor. Their marriage was more traditional and public than many of Eastwood's previous relationships, and Dina often went with him to movie premieres and public events. The couple had 1 daughter together, Morgan Eastwood, born in 1996, who occasionally appeared in the media during her younger years. However, despite their seemingly stable marriage, the couple began drifting apart, and in August 2013, Dina confirmed that she and Eastwood were living separately. Their divorce was finalized in 2014, closing another chapter in the actor's eventful romantic life. In total, Clint Eastwood is known to have fathered at least 8 children with 6 different women, though some reports suggest there may be more. He's generally remained quiet when it comes to talking about the full scope of his relationships and family, often choosing not to confirm specific details in interviews or public appearances. This privacy has only added to the mystery surrounding his personal life. Nevertheless, Eastwood has remained close to many of his children, several of whom have followed him into the entertainment industry in different ways. Despite how complicated his personal relationships have been, Eastwood's legacy as a father, partner, and Hollywood icon continues to fascinate the public. At 95 years old, Clint Eastwood, an icon of American cinema known for his tough demeanor, unshakable strength, and near-legendary status in Hollywood, shared a rare and emotional confession that shocked those who thought they knew the man behind the legend. In a quiet moment of looking back on his life, the weathered actor and director, whose life had been filled with fame, fortune, and a long list of romantic relationships, said just 9 haunting words. "She was the only one who could do that to me." He was speaking, of course, about Sondra Locke, the woman whose presence in his life had left a wound so deep and lasting that even 9 decades of living couldn't quite heal it. The words weren't said with anger, but with a deep, almost spiritual pain, as though he were revisiting a chapter of his life he had never truly closed. Sondra Locke was more than just a co-star in films like The Outlaw Josie Wales, The Gauntlet, and Bronco Billy. She was Eastwood's muse, his equal, and perhaps the only woman who ever truly challenged him both artistically and emotionally. They met in 1975, and from the moment their eyes met on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales, something changed in Eastwood. He was no longer just the tough-eyed gunslinger or the weathered anti-hero. Around her, he was human, vulnerable, almost tender. Their relationship, which lasted over 13 turbulent years, was defined by intense passion, artistic teamwork, emotional ups and downs, and ultimately a painful and very public falling apart. And yet, despite everything, the lawsuits, the betrayals, the silence, Locke had left a permanent mark on him that neither time nor success could erase. When Eastwood said the words, "I couldn't walk after," it wasn't just a saying or figure of speech. He wasn't talking about a physical injury, but rather the emotional paralysis that came after their relationship ended. In a life filled with constant movement, film sets, political interviews, award stages, director's chairs, Locke's departure had stopped him in his tracks. He described the breakup as a kind of collapse, an emotional shutdown that left him confused and empty. "She broke something in me," he once admitted to a close friend, "and I never figured out how to fix it." For a man who had survived the tough pressures of Hollywood for over 6 decades, directed Oscar-winning films, and commanded respect with the force of his presence, it was staggering to imagine that he had once been brought so low, not by an enemy, but by a woman he loved. Clint Eastwood, who had always kept control in his life both on and off screen, seemed to surrender that power, however briefly, when he was with Sondra Locke. She was a brilliant, sharp-tongued actress with a strong will and a razor-sharp mind. Unlike many of the women he had dated before or after, Locke wasn't content to stand in his shadow. She demanded to be seen and heard, and she saw through the myth of Clint Eastwood to the vulnerable man beneath. And that, perhaps, is what made her so dangerous to him. She made him feel things he didn't want to feel. She made him question his own instincts. She made him hesitate. Years later, as he sits alone in his Carmel estate, surrounded by awards, scripts, and portraits of a lifetime spent in the spotlight, Eastwood's thoughts often drift back to Sondra. Not the scandal, not the lawsuits, not even the films, but the quiet, stolen moments between takes. The way she looked at him when no one else was around. The way they laughed. The way she could silence him with a single look or draw something raw and real out of him when the camera wasn't rolling. "She was the only one who could do that to me," he said again, softer this time, as though repeating it might make it less true. For a man who had lived through nearly a century of change, war, artistry, and love, Clint Eastwood's most enduring wound wasn't a bullet or betrayal. It was a woman named Sondra Locke. And even at 95, he still carried her memory like a hidden photograph in the pocket of his heart, worn around the edges, but never thrown away.